Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and what a delight it is to serve under your chairmanship. And I congratulate you, if I may, on the extremely elegant and deft way in which you've managed the backbench contributions to this debate. So thank you. As you say, a lightness of touch that has brought great joy to everyone. And it's been a very good-natured debate, and I thank everyone for the comments and questions and arguments that they have put. I particularly would like to single out on your behalf, my colleagues, the member for Southport for hosting and calling this debate, and also because in doing so he has brilliantly selected a day on which the Chancellor himself will be stepping forward with some answers to the specific questions that he's putting. And I must say, as an example of influence in the chamber, I don't think that's to be bettered. I'm very impressed indeed that someone with such tender years in the chamber and this Parliament should be able to bring about such a state of affairs. So I congratulate him for that very much indeed. And I also congratulate colleagues across the House on the astonishing fiscal rectitude that they have shown by and large. I mean, at this point, we're normally into the tens of billions of requests from my thrifty Conservative colleagues, as well as from those in other parties, and I'm very grateful that they've managed to restrain their appetite, possibly because they are looking forward so intently to the festivities this afternoon. As my friends, colleagues across the House will know, I'm responding because I'm the Minister responsible for the National Infrastructure Strategy and for the National Infrastructure Commission and the Infrastructure Projects Authority. And if I may, I'm going to come to all of the comments that were raised, or many of them, at least by colleagues, and talk a little bit about not just about the what, but also the how of infrastructure, because I think that's been very well flagged in the debate that we've had today. So let me first of all say that I don't think it needs to be stated too often. It should not be, as it were, forgotten that the desire to invest for the long term and to level up this country is the driving force of this administration. It's an absolutely central part of what the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and colleagues across the government stand for. And the advent of this pandemic virus has only strengthened, has only increased the appetite to push forward and the urgency of that mission. And of course, to that, the quality of our infrastructure, the speed of its delivery are absolutely essential. So if I may, just rewind a little bit, colleagues will recall that in the March budget, we announced historic increases in capital spending, setting out plans for more than £500 billion of investment over the next few years. And of course, it's important to remember that that investment is not just public investment, it's also private investment. It's very easy to forget the central importance of private investment, and this country remains, through the quality of its regulation, its rule of law, its openness, its ability to set up a business, its accessibility, its language, its culture, it remains extremely attractive to international investment as a place to put their hard-earned cash, and rightly so. In June, the government explained how it planned to accelerate the delivery of infrastructure schemes. In July, it said that it would be bringing forward £8.6 billion worth of capital spending, focusing on shovel-ready projects. And, of course, this afternoon we have not just the spending review statement, but the publication of the National Infrastructure Strategy and some ancillary documents around that. That will set out the plans for the ambitious acceleration of investment into our country's infrastructure and, of course, its relation to the levelling up agenda. And if it doesn't perfectly address all of the questions that my honourable friend, Member Southport, has raised in his speech, then that's only because if he'd given us a couple more days, we'd have been able to reshape the thing even more precisely. Let me, if I may, also talk a little bit about what's been achieved so far. So, member opposite, to whom I welcome again her place on the shadow bench, has talked about what's been achieved so far. I think it's important to flag on what has been achieved. Then we can talk about where we want to go. The first thing I would say is, of course, there is an enormous amount of investment already going into the ground, and in particular going in the north of England. So in his summer economic update, the Chancellor unveiled the Get Britain Building Fund. Already mayors and local enterprise partnerships across the north have received some £319 million from the fund to deliver jobs and skills and infrastructure. And that money is pushing forward a range of projects, from the rollout of electric vehicle charging points in South Yorkshire to a new garden village in Liverpool. Colleagues will be aware of the Towns Fund, which is already underway, and which, if I may say so, is a great example of collaborative, cross-party, local engagement designed to liberate energies and bring forward projects that were not necessarily on the local council's radar screens, and bring them into a coherent long-term relationship with each other and as part of a single plan for particular towns. That fund is paying for infrastructure schemes that will unleash the economic potential of smaller communities across the country. It's been rightly said by colleagues that we shouldn't be purely focused on cities. It's a very important aspect of that, and I commend that to them. And of course, I'm delighted that my honourable friend and member Southport's constituency is among the places that are benefiting. But we've also accelerated the issuance of some £96 million from the fund to pay for the rollout of even more projects that will fuel economic recovery after the coronavirus. Now, of course, it's hard to think about infrastructure without thinking about transport, and that is going to continue to be crucial to unlocking the productivity of this country, and in particular in the north. And that is why, of course, we're investing very, very substantial, indeed record sums, into improving it. The Transforming Cities Fund has provided city regions across the north, including Greater Manchester, Liverpool, Tees Valley, with over £800 million to make their transport networks even better and greener. The last budget, we also announced a £4.2 billion investment across 8 city regions, including Greater Manchester, Sheffield and Tees Valley, for 5-year consolidated transport settlements starting in 2022. And in addition, we're spending billions of pounds on upgrading the North's major strategic road network, and colleagues will be aware that RIS2, which I negotiated with the Treasury, I was on the other side of the fence when I was at Department of Transport with my beloved friend, the Honourable for Blackpool South, we were able, Blackpool North actually, we were able to negotiate a very substantial investment in road building on a strategic basis, RIS2, across the country, including a lot of schemes in the north. And that, of course, is not just about, as it were, new roads. That is also about making our existing road network more effective and ready for electric vehicles and, in due course, autonomous vehicles. So it's a very important part of the development of our overall infrastructure. But those schemes include dualling the A66 across the Pennines and the A1 from Morpeth to Ellingham in the northeast, upgrading the A63 in Castle Street in Hull, and of course the Simister Island Junction in Greater Manchester. The same is true for investment in the North's railways, and as colleagues will be aware, we're going to publish an integrated rail plan that looks at the scope and the form and phasing of rail investment in the North and the Midlands. And of course, we seek to reverse some of the beaching cuts of the 1960s so that we can get more community connections in place as well. Now, I spoke earlier about the importance not just of the what, but of the how you invest. And I think colleagues are absolutely right to raise that question. And I think in particular, I'd single out the comments made by my friend, the colleague members for Stoke-on-Trent North, because he was right to focus on that. And I would say that through the National Infrastructure Strategy that we're publishing this afternoon, and through the work that goes on around that, the Infrastructure Commission, which we've set up, the Infrastructure Projects Authority, we are thinking harder about how to choose, how to integrate those schemes and to deliver them as best we can, better, I think, than any other government for a very long time. Let me just give you a little example, which is close to my heart, which is this ministerial training programme that I've set up for colleagues now in its second phase, colleagues will please know, because we've taken the view that ministers can benefit as senior civil servants, and indeed anyone who aspires to be in the senior civil service can benefit from becoming better clients of major projects, better able to ask searching questions about timing, schedule, budget of delivery. And so that's something that we've put in place. I think that's a very important thing. And as colleagues will know, we're planning to set up a new economic campus in the north of England with a substantial number of civil servants and people across the economic parts of government in order to give not just a local presence, but a change of mindset that responds to the concerns that colleagues have got. If we just, if I may, pick up another couple of points in terms of the how, colleagues will know we've recently established the Northern Transport Acceleration Council designed to get those projects up and running more quickly. We're pressing harder on the devolution agenda. That's been rightly flagged amongst colleagues. We've just agreed a devolution deal with West Yorkshire, £1 billion of new investment and a directly elected Metro Mayor in place from May next year. We fully implemented the Sheffield City Region deal, including £900 million of new funding, along with substantial devolved powers over transport, skills and planning. And we intend to go further still through the forthcoming devolution and local recovery white paper. If I pick up some of the, I'm lucky that we've, thanks to your genius, Mr. Gray, we've got a bit of time. I can spend a bit more time talking about the specific comments that have been made, because they've been extremely helpful and interesting. I thought my old friend, the member for Southport, was absolutely right to encourage us to look away to rural areas as well as to cities. He painted an almost Garden of Eden picture of the life in Southport as people stroll airily from flower shows to comedy festivals to air shows while striking a mean 4-iron on Royal Birkdale. I thought that was an exquisite moment. But he also rightly highlighted the importance of railway and the Stronger Towns Fund and free ports, which, as he will know, we've announced and from which the North has the potential to benefit hugely in this competition. The member for Weaver Vale is not here, but I thought he was right to focus on devolution, and I've touched on that in my earlier remarks. The point about the capillaries as well as the arteries of infrastructure was well made by my friend, the Right Honourable Member for Tatton, and I thought my honourable friend, the member for Elmwood Roth, was absolutely right to focus on the short, the medium and the long term. And of course, as he will know, one of the great unsung heroes of transport policy over the last few years has been Sir Rod Eddington. His report was very much about managing those smaller schemes, often enormously important, not to be forgotten, which just move, in particularly in suburbs and areas of moving large volumes of traffic, people by rail or by road, or other means. And I thought that was absolutely right. I thought his call for a new Rhine system of navigation in the north was optimistic, but I respected the intent and the energy behind it. My member for Lee was absolutely right to pick up light rail. When I was Department for Transport, we did a consultation on light rail. I think there's such a great potential in that area. It's extremely inexpensive compared to some of the heavier rail alternatives, and it could be a beautiful new industry for the UK to develop. We've got tremendous amount of relevant skills in the supply chain, and I very much look forward to hearing more about that from colleagues. Of course.
Thanks, Shelburne.
My right honourable friend, you just indulge me for 1 second. We've had a good debate today, and many colleagues have been able to add to it. Well, I'd just like to put on the record, Mr. Gray, that some of our colleagues are unable to contribute. For example, my honourable friend for Pudsey, who, due to his commitments, is unable to take part in the debate, is as equally involved in infrastructure in the north, and his ambitions are there. And I'd just like to get that on the record, that there are many colleagues in the north who are unable to take part, and I'm sure the Minister would have responded to them, but they are equally as important in this conversation as all of us.
Minister.
I think my honourable friend's absolutely right. The unheard voices are as important as the voices in the room now, and of course, as he will know, my door remains absolutely open to them at any point in this debate or otherwise. My dear friend, the member for Blackpool North, raised rightly the point about BCRs. That's such an important technical point. That they should not be abused. There's a certain art and craft to effective valuation assessment. The centre for it actually is in the Department for Transport across government rather than in the Treasury. We have a great deal of respect for the work they do there from where I am. I would say in the Treasury, though, there's a very high level of understanding of industry now in a way that hasn't always been true of the Treasury. And that means you get a better client relationship between the two sides, or a better interaction between the ministries, the departments and the centre. I thought my friend, the member for Sedgefield's idea of a funding pot for MPs raises all kinds of worries in me, I have to say. I think we've been there before in our history, some hundreds of years ago. I'm a little bit nervous about that. But the idea that there should be significant political leadership in making choices and accountability for that is absolutely right. And I think the Stronger Towns Fund actually is all a good way of tying those elements together. So I don't disagree with him about that. Member for Bury South talked about infrastructure of the mind, as I would call it. Skills, so important, so easy to forget, and only to focus on transport. I thought he was absolutely right about that. And I can commend him to look at the work of the new university we're setting up in Hereford. which does exactly that. The importance of cultural infrastructure was mentioned by a friend, the member of North West Durham, and rather than overrun, I hope I've done enough to recognise the contributions otherwise made, and I'll allow my dear friend, the member of Southport, to